Welcome back to Home Cooking Hacks, where we will teach you how to do excellent things in the kitchen without all of the gizmos and gadgets. So today we are going to be talking about how to make a homemade chili. This is probably my most gadget-fied cooking lesson because we do need to use a crock pot. And I think a crock pot is a fabulous thing to keep around. And a lot of the reason for keeping a crock pot around is that with a crock pot you can make various soups, you can make chicken broths from scratch, and just a lot of other fun, useful things. So crock pot is one of those things that I think is an excellent item to have. The other thing that I am going to use here is I'm going to use a pureer. You could probably get away with a blender because I used to use this for vegetables and things like that, and it really got to the point where I just found that this does not do a real good job for that. Now, I also, though, use a pureer to make butter, and that's actually why I keep it around. So there's a few little applications for it that we want to keep in mind. So to make a chili, we want to look at some very specific ingredients here, and gotta find my camera there. There we are. Okay, so what we are going to use to make chili is, I don't use anything canned or anything like that. I use real beans. I actually just get varieties of beans and mix them together. I usually would not use white beans in chili, but I happen to have a bunch laying around. I think a friend gave them to me or something. They were extras laying around. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll go ahead and just use those. I'll usually use some red kidney beans, black beans, darker kidney beans, just a variety of different beans in there. Now, the beans are the thing that if you're making chili, you need to plan a day in advance, because if you're doing it with hard beans, you want to plan a day in advance. And I'll talk about that when we get into making the beans. Next thing, of course, is we need meat. It's just some type of ground meat is usually best. I usually get 20-80 or even 75-25 if I can, because what has ended up happening in our world is that we got to this point where people are teaching us that fat is bad, and so the cool thing is that the cheaper, the more fat content in the beef, the cheaper it gets, and that's excellent, because this one here, I end up paying $11, where's that at? Up paying $11.98, and this is 6 pounds. We only need about 2 pounds. That means that I can make 3 full batches of chili out of this. So for $12, I can make 3 big batches of chili. So I'm going to cut the, open the beef up. I'm going to slice it into about thirds. Then I'm going to divvy up the rest of the beef into the various bags. I'll probably do that off camera because it's not part of making chili. But that's kind of what we're going to do with that. As far as my sauce, I don't like using any canned tomatoes or things like that. The best tomatoes to get are tomatoes on the vine. So you can find the tomatoes on the vine. They just kind of look like this here. You got your tomatoes. They're still on the vine, so they're still getting some nutrients in there. They just kind of get a little bit better. Now, I absolutely hate tomatoes. The only time you'll ever see me buy tomatoes is when I'm making chili or something else where I need to puree them up. It's just a personal preference thing. I just can't stand them. You also want to use green pepper, so I got a nice green pepper here. Just 1 green pepper is good for this batch. I'm going to use some onions. I generally just buy shallots instead of regular onions for the most part, and I'll end up cutting up I'll probably just use 2 shallots for this. You want to use, if you're using cooking onions, just do like one regular size cooking onion. And then I'm going to use some garlic. So I got this from the local farmer's market, so we're just going to chop up probably 3 or 4 cloves or so. And then for the seasonings, the only things I'm going to do for seasonings is I'm going to do a basic chili powder. Now, your chili powder, just change your chili powder for various flavors. I really like getting chipotle chili powder for my chili, but it was a whole lot more expensive, and I was already really close to my budget for the month. So I can buy these for $1. Not the best, but it'll work. Versus chipotle powder, I think is like either 5 or 7. But like I said, I was right up on pushing the limits of my budget, and You know, I don't use cards, I use cash, and however much money's in the wallet, so I had to go down to the cheaper chili powder. I'm going to use just some type of seasoned salt and then some regular salt as well. So I'm just going to salt it to taste. Now, as far as cooking is concerned, I don't necessarily have exactly how much of this you use or how much of that do you use. So I'm not going to tell you 3 tablespoons of salt. Some people like a little bit saltier food, and so just add a little bit more salt. Some people like a little bit less. So for me, I'm kind of a little bit less. I don't eat a lot of processed food, so I don't eat a lot of salts in my foods, and so I'm not geared towards that. I'm going to use some white pepper and some black pepper in here just because it is just fabulous to do that. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what we do with the beans here. Like I said, this is a step. I did this last night before I got all the camera stuff set up. So I'm just going to walk through the process. This is extremely simple. You want to use 2.5 cups of hard beans. Now you could use all the same kinds. I like mixing my beans together, so what I end up doing is I just get a big jar. For me, it just ends up being just a big coffee container. So I use these, and I'll buy 4 packs of beans. Just the regular, just if you go to the store and you purchase the regular size pack of beans, that's about 2.5 cups. Might be 2.5. So I'll get 4 of those, mix them all into here, shake this guy up, and then I use a 2.5 cup scoop here. Just scoop up 2.5 cups of beans. In this case, I threw them all in this little yogurt container I had just to more easily show you what I have there. So this is the beans. This is enough for later on, so I'm just going to leave those up here, and we'll come back to those. So I'm going to put 2.5 cups inside of a big pot, like this one here, and then I'm actually going to cover it with about an extra inch or so of water. And then what we are going to do is boil that. And I boiled this for about 2 hours last night. If it gets too low in water, dump it out. And then you can put it in the refrigerator, or you can just leave it soak overnight. So our beans now look like this. I probably should have, I would probably almost always recommend rinsing the beans out and then putting them in the refrigerator. So this guy here, this will be just fine, but we are going to want to rinse these beans before we use them. We're going to rinse them up pretty good. So that is the part for the beans. So let's go ahead and start making this chili here. So the first thing we might want to do is we're going to just literally chili is add a bunch of stuff together. But I kind of want to start out with my tomato paste, which is going to be utilizing my pureer, and then I'm going to fry up my tomatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the counter off, get the pureer set up, and then we'll get back to that in a moment. Okay, so to make our sauce, what we're going to do is I'm just going to start by taking all the tomatoes off the vine and peel off all of the parts, and then we're going to want to rinse the tomatoes out in the sink. So I'm just going to pull off all the vine here. I did notice that some of the tomatoes got a little scarred there, so just double check your tomatoes, make sure you're not getting scarred ones. I did not spot that until I made it home, unless maybe they got scarred up in the car on the way back. I had a big bag of stuff, so just getting all of these stickers off. Just look all the way around because we want to make sure there's nothing on those. I'm not going to cut any part out. I'm just going to slice up all the tomatoes and throw them right in the pureer, just cutting them down just enough. So we're going to start by rinsing them out. Okay, and now all I need to do is just cut them into small enough pieces to fit right into the pureer, and then just drop them right on in. Once I'm sufficiently filled, I think that's all I'm going to fit in there. I'm going to put the lid on and just puree them up. Okay, now if you happen to like tomato chunks in your chili, you don't want to puree them up quite as much, or you might just want to dice up some tomatoes. For me personally, I absolutely abhor tomatoes, so I don't ever do that. I get this stuff as chopped up as I possibly can. I have found that for me, what I like in my chili is as small tomato pieces as possible. But by using, why am I using raw tomatoes if I hate them so much? Isn't it a lot easier just to get a can of tomatoes and put them in? And the answer is yeah, it's a lot easier. But the taste is not as good. You sacrifice the quality by not using real tomatoes. And I guess I should also say, by not using fresh tomatoes, you sacrifice a lot of the quality of your chili. Okay, I'm still seeing this massive chunk here. That's kind of the one getting in my way. But I think despite that massive chunk there, I'm going to throw this in over here, and I just dumped tomato juice all over. That's gross. Well, gross to me. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to monitor it. If there's any massive chunks, I'm going to pick them up and throw them back in. But that's pretty good. So while I'm doing back here is I just have the bottom of the crock pot over here, and I'm just pouring the paste right into the bottom here. I'm going to actually run the crock pot over at another location, actually probably just on the kitchen table. Because that's the thing is, this apartment is so small that I can't even, cook on the crock pot on the counter, even if I wasn't recording a video. I don't have room. Okay, what's actually going to help me get these chopped up more is if I can fit, the fuller I can make this thing, the better off it's going to be. I just can't fit all that much in right away. Okay, so it looks like our tomato is pretty much done. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this and just going to hold the bottom spindle in there and see, there's a few bigger chunks. So there's one huge chunk in there. Okay, that's going to be good enough. Alright, so I'm actually done with the pureer now. So I'm going to just throw this in the sink and wash this when I have a spare moment. And this guy here is going to need just rinsed off, so I'm going to set that aside and rinse that off later. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my beans. So I'm going to come over here and just rinse the beans. So all I'm going to do is just run some water in here, stir the beans around inside of the water, and then I'll just go ahead and put a lid on this and dump. I'll rinse and do that about twice. Okay, then the next part is that we are going to want to add a little bit of water to our mixture with the tomato paste. We don't want to add too much, but if we add too much, we can just turn on the crock pot a little bit with the lid off and it'll evaporate some of the water. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to get my 2 cups. I'm just going to add about 2 cups of water to the beans, and then we're just going to go ahead and transfer the beans over. Okay, so I just put 2 cups of water in my beans, and so here's what my beans are looking like, nice and rinsed, very soft. So if you see these, very soft, and you can see that I had some water in there, so I'm just going to go ahead and mix these guys in. Eventually I'm going to want to start stirring this with something other than this spoon, but this will be fine for now. So at this point in time, since we have more of the liquid in there, see there's still a couple big tomato chunks, that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and start adding my spices. So this is a 2.87 ounce of chili powder. I am simply going to open up and pour the whole thing in. That's about all the chili powder you need for this size. So I can stir that around in here a little bit. And then as far as everything else is concerned, I'm just going to start by putting some in. Probably it'll end up being 1 or 2 teaspoons worth of the various peppers and whatever else. So I like to make sure all my black pepper is nice and ground. So that looks like eyeballing about a teaspoonish or so. Go ahead and do that. I'm just going to go ahead and do that twice. Usually you'll get a little bit more out of this, but I'm almost out of peppercorn here. So as you get less and less peppercorn in your container, it'll be, it does not grind quite as nicely. I got to refill it. Okay. So there's about 2 teaspoons of that. And then our white pepper. White pepper pours really fast, so I'm just going to eyeball that. That's going to be good for now. And then what we will end up doing with the other items, since I have a scoop availability on the seasoned salt, I'm just going to do 2 teaspoons of seasoned salt. And I'm going to start with about a teaspoon of regular salt. And I will probably need to go more than that. Let me see if I can. Let's see if I can actually get that going. Usually I would actually grab my big container of salt and just pour into this. But it's up in the cabinet up here. Camera's in the way. Got to make sure I always grab all my ingredients out of the cabinet before I put that in the way. All right. So now that should be pretty good on our seasonings. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to take this, put the lid on, and just go turn it on the crock pot and turn it on high. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to handle our meat. Okay, so as I said, we are going to use about 2-ish pounds of ground beef. So I happen to have each one of these guys here, since this is 6 pounds, each one of these guys here is about 3 pounds each. And so what I'm going to end up doing is, let's see, I'm just going to eyeball this with my knife, and let's say that looks like about 1/3 of this. That looks like about 2/3 of this. What we're going to do is I'm just going to grab this. So this is about 2 pounds, and I'm simply going to go ahead and add this 2 pounds directly into it. I'm just going to walk it on over to the table where I have the crock pot going, and we'll go ahead and just pour this in. I'm going to make sure I pour it in carefully so I don't splash. All right, so that is that. Okay, so now we're going to come back and manage our vegetables. So one of the things you could potentially do is just mix everything into one giant mixing bowl and then throw it all into the mix together. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this bowl here, which is usually use those to mix powders. That way I can just chop up the vegetables I want to do, throw them in there, stir them together, and so the vegetables are a little bit more stirred. So you want to make sure that you rinse things off. So I've already rinsed my pepper here. So we're just going to basically cube the pepper, and I'm going to do this just by cutting down the middle part. I'm going to pull out this piece here, and if that guy's getting in my way, which it is right now, we're just going to clunk those out. And then what we're going to do now is just kind of slice. You'll see there's a couple of spots on here that are not quite as good, so I'm just going to cut those guys out and toss those away. I'm just going to cube them up like that. They'll kind of shrink down a little bit as you cook them, so don't worry if they seem a little bit large. Now, if you really like spicy and hot and spicy type chilies, you can add extra things like, the chipotle chili powder that I frequently use for chili. That'll get a lot hotter chili. You can also add things like Red Hot, which I don't know, I may or may not do. But if you do like your spicy chili, you can do things like that. You can add jalapenos or some other hot peppers instead of standard green peppers. This chili I'm making here is actually not a hot chili at all. But I vary it. If I do want hot or spicy chili, you add chipotle chili powder instead of the regular chili powder, and that generally is okay. And then jalapenos or habaneros or ghost peppers if you're so inclined. So for your shallots, of course, they're kind of together like this. You can break them off in clumps, sort of like garlic does with its cloves. I'm going to peel off probably about the first layer or so. You'll see it's basically a shallot is just an onion that is quite a bit smaller. I like shallots because you get, well, first they're a lot smaller, and so for a single guy cooking, that's what I like to keep around, is just smaller portions of things when I can. But the other thing is that there's more prebiotics, apparently more prebiotic activity inside of shallots, things like that, than you do get inside of onions. And so for that, they generally tend to be a little bit better for you in that respect. You can see what I did there. You break them down to these little pieces, and then I'll just go this way and then dice it across like this. There might be faster ways to do this, but it's the thing that works well for me. And if you have a big food processor, you probably have something you can toss the thing in there and dice it up. But again, I just, in Home Cooking Hacks, we teach you how to do this stuff without all those. So the only reason I still have the puree, or you could easily use a blender for that, but the blender does not make butter well. But the purator makes butter really well if I want to make butter. So I'm going to repeat this with each one of my shallots. If I have a problem, like difficulty peeling that top layer off, I'll just kind of start there and then kind of edge my way in. So if you get one layer in like this, the rest of the skin will peel off nice and easy. It's a little bit slimy, so if it's jumping around a lot, that's why. It's because it's some of that. So this edge here, I guess I can use that edge. I wasn't sure if I wanted to use that edge or not. There, I just cut a whole stack of them at once. Save yourself a little bit of time doing that. It's okay to have some larger pieces and some smaller pieces in here. I'm not going to use this one. It looks like I'm getting about enough with the three of them here. If you notice, I did not add specifically onion powder or garlic powder, and the reason is I'm just using a lot more potent initial ingredients, so that's kind of why I'm not doing that. I wanted to tell you this sad story so I don't look like a wussy when I cry, but no. Okay, so there we got that mixture together, green peppers, onions, well, shallots technically. And now I'm going to figure out how many cloves of garlic I'm going to use. I got this one from a farmer's market, but not as good a quality as I usually get at a farmer's market. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's last year's garlic or something. Yeah, it looks like I'll just use all of this. So some of these, like these ones here with the garlic growing out the top, I'll show you that one then, that camera there. Much nicer looking. I mean, some of these though are a little small, but that's okay. I don't mind those with those green. In fact, I'm going to chop up that green part and just throw it right on in there. So this one here, of course, there still is a lot of skin on this piece of garlic, so you want to make sure you get that off. I like just holding it tight and twist and turn, and it'll crack off the skin, so then you can just crack it off like that. Once again, make sure I have a good camera view of it this time. The skin there, just pinch either edge and just twist it and turn it. And then you can just peel the skin right off like that. I want to make sure I get all the pieces peeled before I start cutting, so I don't, you'll start getting the garlic juice on your hand and then stuff will stick to it, so you don't want to have to be peeling out more garlic while you're doing that. Okay, so I want to first start with the garlic by cutting off the root portion. That part is kind of tough and woody, so you don't want to include that in your chili. I'm going to cut all those off first. This is a lot of garlic to go in the chili, but that's okay. I like garlic. I'm certainly not part vampire. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab these guys and just kind of carve it down the middle and then like this. So the seasons in garlic, the reason garlic can stay so fresh for so long is the active components in garlic never actually they never actually expel themselves until the cell wall is broken, which means if you throw whole cloves of garlic in something and you don't chop them up prior to that, then you can actually get to the point to where the garlic will still not really release its flavor until it's actually eaten and broken up. So some of it you could go a little bit longer like that. That's okay. For the really big pieces, I might cut it a couple of times. Okay, so now we're just going to mix this guy together. And I'm going to use my spoon over here, and I'm just going to go spoon this into my chili mix. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and grab that. As a minimalist in the kitchen, I actually don't generally just use pot holders. I use towels. I just keep the extra towels laying around, and I keep a few extra towels here and there, and I just use towels as pot holders. I don't need anything fancier or dancier than that. So here is you can see that the part of it did not get submerged. See if I can get better lighting on that. We have really bad lighting on that. All right, so you can see here that this part here that is not submerged is still pink. The part that's down here is starting to get a little bit brown. This will take a while. You can see here's the edge that's getting some brown. Now, of course, if you break this up like this and stir it around a little bit better, it'll cook a little bit more. But this right here, we're to the point right now where it's done. It just has to cook now. Once we, of course, add these. So we're going to go ahead and add our vegetables. Stir these guys in. And then what I'm going to do here is, now that all of the basic ingredients in, I'm actually going to top the rest off with water, which will just give me a little bit more moisture here to stir things around. Some of it's going to evaporate off, and if it's too much water, you can go ahead and leave the lid off for a little bit and let some evaporate out. You probably want to cook the meat all the way first, just to make sure you're not losing any of that. You do want to make sure that this is 165 before you serve it, but it'll probably be that way in 4 or 5 hours. So you can see that we have a very nice chili base. There's the meat spread throughout there. We have beans, we have the vegetables, onions, all that kind of stuff. So now I'm just going to top off the rest with some water. Actually, what I'm going to use is, I keep around purified water here. I'm just going to add water until it's just up to the lip. Stir that around, make sure it's smooth throughout. Now we are probably going to need to season it up a little bit more once it's done, but we're just going to go ahead and let this go first and see what comes of this in a few hours. So this is essentially how to make chili. That is all the steps that it takes. Now we just need to leave it on the crock pot on high for a few hours and come back and revisit our chili in a bit. So I moved the chili over here to the countertop where I can stir it, take care of it a little bit better. So I can see that most of the meat has been browned as I've been stirring it. And what we're going to do is, before I take the lid off at this time, I'm going to temp it. So these guys up here, these holes up here, they are temp holes. So you can put a thermometer right up there and you can see what the temperature is. Again, with chili like this, I do not want to serve it until it's at least 165. So right now it's we're about 155. Might be 160 if I allow it to go a little bit warmer. So it might be about 160. So it's getting there. It's to the point where I can test it now. I can start seeing if the spices are right. And so let me grab a plate here so I can stir this up and put this container, or put this stirring thing on a plate there. So you can see here what this looks like. A couple little tomato chunks in there. So all the meat should be brown, should be ground up. There's a couple bigger chunks like this, but for the most part I have smaller chunks. You can see it's just a very nice, each bite's going to have a little bit of meat, a little bit of beans, a little bit of your other vegetables. So now though, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start doing taste testing to make sure the flavoring is good. Generally, I always need to come back in behind myself and add some more flavorings. I might not have enough salt, for example, things like that. So it's going to grab a little bit and see how it is. Definitely light on the salt. So I think what we'll do is add another teaspoon, probably. maybe 2 teaspoons of salt might do me. It's not salty at all. It has an appropriate amount of spice. There's 1 teaspoon. I'm gonna do about 1.5-ish. I don't want to accidentally overdo the salt, so you guys got to make sure that you're not overdoing any particular spice. The other thing, let's see. I was thinking maybe I could add some celery salt, but I'm not sure if that would be the best thing to add for chili. Okay. There's a little bit of that. Let me wash off my spoons so I can try another sample. That's actually pretty good. Ooh, a little spicier than I thought it would be. Probably because I added the extra white pepper. But yeah, that's very good. Actually, it's just about salty enough too. So I'm not going to try and add anything else in, at least until it cooks for another little bit. So pretty much that will be ready in about an hour, I'd say at the most. And so within about an hour, I will be able to start serving that up. So this has been Tom. And come on back again for some more home cooking hacks.